Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I honestly need to kind of get back on track with doing my reading wrap-ups. So I'm going to be doing all of the books that I read in February in this video. And I read 6 books in February as I wrote them all right here, and I'm really excited to talk to you about them. I feel like it hasn't been that long since I read them, so hopefully I'll remember them. And yeah, I'm just really excited to tell you guys the books that I read in the month of February. So the first book that I read is Evenings and Weekends by Oisin McKenna. This was like a fictional book, and I've been seeing it kind of on YouTube and also on Pinterest because it has like a really nice, very literary fiction kind of cover. So I picked it up and I had it on hold for like a week or so. It is a book about summer. It's definitely a really good read when the weather gets very hot because it's talking about like these characters in Britain during the summer, I think. And there's just so many descriptions of how sticky it is and how lethargic everyone feels. I honestly kind of forgot some things about this book, but it's like a multiple POV literary fiction book, and I think that it really touches on the theme of being gay or queer in Britain. I don't know, I can't remember if it's in Britain or Ireland is my problem, but it's somewhere in Europe, I'm pretty sure. And it follows different characters. It follows some young adults, follows this gay man, and he's kind of dealing with his family and also just growing up. But it follows a lot of different characters, and the cool thing is that they're kind of all intertwined with each other in some way. They're either relatives or they're friends, and it's just honestly a very nice book. I'd recommend it as a beach read, or if you're reading it during really hot weather. It was actually surprisingly very engaging. Sometimes I find that literary fiction kind of takes its time, but I really like that this one gave us different POVs, and also it's just really beautiful writing overall. And there are a few lines actually touched me in this book, so I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. So it was a pretty decent start to my month. The next book that I read is What Lies Beyond the Veil by Harper L. Woods. And I have such strong thoughts about this book. I originally read it for my reading fantasy books for a week video, but I haven't finished that yet. But in the beginning, when I first started reading this book, I was very intrigued. It's like a YA-ish kind of fantasy book about this girl who she's a servant for this very wealthy guy who owns the manor, and there's kind of the first 20% is when you kind of get the exposition, and it's oh, she is living under a place of extreme oppression, and there's kind of sexual assault, and overall it just was very heavy in the first 20%. But what made me really sad is that how easily all of that just completely dissipates in the remaining rest of the book, and it so quickly becomes this romance novel, and the romance is just so icky to me on so many levels because there's this random the whole system is that there's an actual veil between the normal people and the fae, and then something happens where every year they need to make a new sacrifice so that the power of the veil will still be able to keep the fae out, because everyone in the normal town I guess just hates the fae people. But then this time she somehow ends up preparing to get sacrificed, and then she doesn't sacrifice because all the fae jump over the veil or something, but she's marked by the veil, so then there's a mark on her neck or something where people are oh, I have to kill you now because that means that a fae is her mate, and then is going to do everything that they can to find her. So that means that the fae are gonna keep on going over the veil into the normal realm if they still have the people who are marked. And when I tell you this book had such an interesting plot in the beginning, it could have gone somewhere. This literally doesn't go anywhere, and it's a series, and the plot is just so slow. It's literally just her and then her brother going through the woods to try and escape from all people trying to kill them, and then something happens, and then she meets up with this dude named Caleb who also has been marked, so they're traveling together. And I don't know how much of a spoiler this is, but he has this very immediately romantic attraction to her, and I just think that their whole relationship is so so icky. I mean, like, every time he's speaking, he has to constantly be like, and I want you, and you're gonna like the stuff he was saying was actually so out of pocket, and I was like, bro, like, you're not a good person. The author was trying so hard to make him seem like a good person, even in the beginning, because he was like, because she didn't feel the same way about him in the beginning, but he was like so dead set. He was like, I know that you're gonna want me, like, I know you're gonna be falling in love with me. He's like, I'll wait. Like, bruh, we're not doing her like a service. That's just basic decency. And the things that he was saying is genuinely so icky, and I just like the romance so immediately becomes very central to the book. The plot basically is non-existent at that point, and I really did not like the romance. And the big plot twist at the end is really not a plot twist because it's so obvious. So unless you want like a romance book that is like very raunchy, I guess, and has like a very like commanding male lead, I don't even like that. Like, I wouldn't recommend this book, and that's why I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars instead of a 1 out of 5 stars. So I think that maybe some people would like the romance, but my main thing is how I didn't like the romance at all, and that just really spoiled the entire experience of reading this book for me. I don't know, it just like, it felt so long and so stagnant because the only thing that would actually progress is like this will they won't they between Callum and Estrella, the main character. So the next book that I read is Done and Dusted by Lila Sage, and this is a book that actually really pleasantly surprised me. It follows this one girl who I forgot what her name is, Emmy. I think it's like her nickname, and she basically like is a professional horseback rider, like they compete and stuff. And after an accident, she ends up going back to her family ranch, and with that, she also reconnects with her brother's longtime like childhood best friend that she's known for her whole life, named Luke, and they end up having a romance together. And it's kind of like a horse girl cowboy romance, but even though it really like has that trope, I guess, it doesn't really fall too much into it, and I think it's still a really cozy, sweet romance, but it doesn't like play too much into that trope. The romance I actually didn't mind. I think it was kind of cute, but what I really enjoyed is that the pacing of this really works. I think the writing style is very easy to fly through. At this point, after reading like What Lies Beyond the Veil, I was kind of in a reading slump, and I was like, I need something that I just can fly through kind of quickly, and I actually finished this pretty quickly. It was a very easy read. I don't know, it was just a very sweet, nice, cozy romance. I do want to say, the more you think about it, like nitpick, you'll be like, this does not have any depth, but I feel like not every book you read needs to serve the same purpose, and for me, this was just really good for like what I needed, and it was just a good book. And also, this might become like a series for the Rebel Blue books or whatever it's called, so I will be interested in reading like the next one, but I'm not too into it that like I need to immediately read the next one. But yeah, that was Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. The covers of these books are also so pretty, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, so pretty good. The next book that I read is a physical book. I've been trying to read like one physical book per month so I can also start working on my physical TBR, because I tend to neglect that and only do my Libby books. But the book that I read is The Devil Wears Prada by Laura Weisberger. I've been wanting to get this book for a long time, and when I got it like last year, I still didn't really have a chance to read it, so this month I made like an effort to finish it. And I read this book very slowly because the chapters are kind of long. I read like one chapter per night, so it actually took me probably nearly a month to get through, but I ended up really enjoying it. It basically follows this girl named Andy, and she is like a recent college graduate, and she wants to become a journalist, but the first job that she lands, that she gets like accepted and as she gets offered, is to be the fashion assistant of a very prestigious, a very high profile editor of this magazine called Runway Magazine named Miranda Priestly. And basically it kind of just follows her experience working under her. Like, Miranda Priestly is just super hard on her. Being a fashion assistant is just very busy, and it kind of shows just her progression with like how she absolutely hates her job, and also how it kind of ends up taking a toll on her own health because she's like constantly burnt out, and also just how absurd Miranda Priestley is, and like her other relationships with like her best friend and her boyfriend kind of fall to the backseat as she takes so much priority for this job. So I will say that I think that the way that I read this made my experience much better, because thinking about it in hindsight, because after I read this, I went on Goodreads and I was like, okay, I just kind of want to read the other reviews and see what they thought. And a lot of people were saying how it's very repetitive because there are many scenes where it's just like Miranda gives Andy like an absurd task. Like one task, she just wants to make Andy get her the new Harry Potters the day before they release, and she's like, how the hell am I supposed to do that? And she gives her like no instructions or details, and that kind of happens a lot. But because of the way that I read it, where every day, like to end my day, I would read a chapter or two, I didn't get too bothered by how repetitive that aspect of it was. But I do think that if you read this in like 3 to 4 days, you could literally sit there and be like, why are we doing this? Because it would keep on repeating. But I kind of enjoyed it. I haven't read many books like this. I don't really read about like, the fashion industry, and this has been my TBR for a really long time. So I liked it. It really tells you about how like the behind the scenes of working at like a magazine. Some of it is again very lavish because like they're going to parties, and at one point they go on a trip to Europe and like she's attending all these runway shows, but also just like how she literally gets like 3 hours of sleep a night. So I don't know, I would recommend. I will say it is kind of slow. I do like her writing style, but it's not the most fast-paced, action-packed book. And especially like at the end, I don't know why, but I had it in my brain that there would be a really big review, and it kind of doesn't have that, but it was still a good time nonetheless. So I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. And actually I read this so that I could watch the movie, and honestly the movie is good as well, don't get me wrong, but I kind of prefer the book. But yeah, that is The Devil Wears Prada. Okay. The next book that I read in February has honestly been on my Libby like hold shelf for so long because I got it before it released and everyone has been jumping at it, and it's the new Ali Hazelwood Deep End. And I have been keeping up with Ali Hazelwood's books. I will read every single one that she releases. They're honestly just such a fun romp and a good time. This one was not my favorite. So it follows this girl named Scarlett, I think. And basically she is diving for Stanford, and she's also a pre-med student at the same time. And she's very, very stressed. And for some reason or another, she ends up meeting the swim captain's like Olympic gold medalist at Stanford named Luke like Blomquist, and they end up falling in love with each other. And it's kind of also talking about like the sports plot, because she has also kind of recovered from an injury and she is trying to get back her footing while also kind of just dealing with school. And the book kind of talks about it in a way that it's going back and forth between Scarlett's therapy sessions when she's like rehabilitating herself after her diving accident, also in the present where she is having this romance with Luke Blomquist. And I think it was like a pretty okay book. I think I just wasn't super into the romance, and again that's like so subjective because all romances are like that and everyone has different opinions on them, but I liked it. I felt like the beginning was really strong, and then the end I was like, I don't really know. I feel like the very end of it, to me, where there's like kind of this third act conflict, honestly came through at like 80 something percent. So I was like, this is not a third act conflict, but there's a conflict, and I was like, I don't really know if we need this conflict. To me it was not really necessary, but I don't know. I'm comparing this to other Ali Hazelwood books, so maybe I'm comparing it to like a different standard. But this is not my favorite one, even though it was enjoyable as a romance. But yeah, if you want to read like a sports romance about divers and swimmers, I don't know, I would recommend, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The final book that I read in February is These Burning Stars by Bethany Jacobs. And I really honestly have no idea where I got this recommendation from, but this is kind of like a sci-fi fantasy book. It takes place in this kind of steampunk world, and it follows these, I think we get like 2 POVs, but the main thing for me that didn't make me enjoy as much is that the pacing of this book is very, very slow, and she kind of just throws you straight away into the world. So half the time I was literally like, what is this? Like, I didn't know the lore, and I didn't know what the words were, and I didn't know the worlds. And I know in Getting the Ninth, I kind of said that, like, oh, she also throws you in, but I think the thing with Getting the Ninth is that the characters and the dialogue is so witty and they feel so compelling that I'm still interested. But for this one, I think so many of the characters are kind of more stoic and they're very serious people, which I understand, like, that's your intention, then this is just something that's very subjective. So because of that, I didn't feel that they were too compelling. And for me, also, the voices of the characters at some points felt very similar. There's like one that's super distinct, but to me, the rest of them kind of don't have their own flair as much. But at its core, because I feel like I can't explain this without spoiling it, it's kind of like an investigation, and also there's like a lot of government intrigue. Basically, like, there's 2 sides that we kind of follow. There's one side that's like the cat, and there's the other side that's the mouse, and there's like a government conspiracy that's getting threatened to be released. There's a lot of violence in this book, not too graphic, but I don't know, for some reason to me this didn't hit very much. And I think it was the pacing, and also that I wasn't particularly interested in any of the characters, but I didn't actively hate them at the same time. And I know there was like a lot of praise, I think, on the blurb. It's like there is an absolutely gravity defying twist at the end. The twist at the end, to me, this specific kind of twist, which I cannot say obviously, is not my favorite. I was like reading it, I was like interesting. I don't know, I just was a little bit disappointed by it, but I also don't know if that's because sometimes with slower fantasy books and my attention span, like, they just don't match up all the time. But I don't know, I do think it was a pretty solid read, but just going into this, know that it's not the most satisfying book, because it's not very, very fast-paced. And I would also say that if you are looking for something with romance, there's like very, very little romance. I didn't care at all. I actually kind of like that there's no romance in this book, because I think that would have been too much. But yeah, that's just something to note if you care at all. But I don't know, I just sometimes I have like a trouble trying to separate my thoughts because of the time that I read it and the mood that I was in versus how the book actually is. So because of that, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. And yeah, those are all of the books that I have read in the month of February. I am currently reading like a lot of very interesting books in March that I will be excited to share in the next wrap up. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.